Okay, so welcome everybody. My name is Brian. I'm Brian Sneed. I'm the allocation coordinator at TAC, and we're going to talk about the process of writing a successful allocation for Frontera. If you have questions, you're welcome to use the chat interface. I'm not watching that, but some other folks are. And so you'll be able to submit some questions you have there. And of course, towards the end, I'll also provide some other mechanisms that you can use to ask questions if you have questions. But with that being said, we'll get started. So the objectives, what we're going to talk about, the different types of opportunities that exist for allocation on Frontera. There are different tracks, if you will. And so we're going to talk about those, and then we're going to talk about the criteria that the reviewers use when they are reading these proposals, and then the process of review, what that kind of looks like, so that you'll know a little bit behind the curtain what's going to happen there. And then some reminders of some things that you'll want to do when you format your proposal and submit it. And then again, some additional resources to consider and look at as you prepare. So first of all, the allocation opportunities. There are 5 different tracks that we have set up for Frontera access. The first of which, the largest of which, is the LRAC, which by the way is closed, just closed. But 2 that are currently still open are Pathways and the LSCP. We'll talk about those in a second. And then there's also the discretionary or educational track, and then the startup track. We'll talk about some details of each one. So first, the leadership computing and resource allocations, what we call LRAC. Those are for large allocation requests, 250,000 to 5 million SUs on the Frontera CPU. That one closed in January, and so those will be processed and going into they'll begin April 1st. In order to be eligible for those, the requests need to demonstrate a readiness to use the cycles. So that large number of cycles, you need to be able to demonstrate that you can actually use those. And then also have current peer-reviewed research funding that's going to last the duration of the allocation process. So again, LRAC has passed already, but we can move on to the ones that are still available. Those are the ones you're wanting to know about right now. So that would be Pathways. Pathways are smaller than the LRAC, so 10,000 to 250,000. So they're quite a bit smaller, and yet they're still quite large, considering the capacity for Frontera. And these are great. A pathway is great for research when you've not yet been able to demonstrate code readiness on Frontera, or if you've not yet been able to get onto Frontera and do some work on Frontera to check out Frontera for your purposes. So pathways are a great way to do that. Gives you a little bit more than a startup would, but not quite as much as you would get for an LRAC. Also, you're with the pathway, you'll want to be able to show an existing research fund that supports the development that's going to be necessary in order to be able to get you up and running on Frontera. Also, there is an interest to allow early career scientists and engineers who are doing innovative and novel things. We certainly want to encourage you, if you fall in that category, to apply for a pathway. Please note that the pathway opportunity ends March 8th. There will be another one coming up, but for the current one, it expires March 8th. Next, we have the LSCP, which is Large Scale Community Partnerships. These are 250,000 to 1 million SUs. What's really key about these is that they are designed to support a longer experiment period than just a year. So if you've got something you're going to do up to 3 years, and you've got funding for 3 years, and you want to be able to sort of record and validate and verify that you're going to have access to a resource for the next 3 years, this is a good way to go. Again, it's 25,000 to 1 million SUs, so there's a size constraint there. Also, you have to have a current peer-reviewed research funding that's going to last the duration of the period that you're asking for. We are limited to 3 years, so we're not doing more than that. And you should note that each year you will be expected to submit a progress review which will then allow for the year 2 and year 3 awards to be added on. And again, that opportunity ends March 8th as well. Next, we have discretionary or educational. Discretionary covers a lot of things. One of the things that falls into that category is education, but also things of urgent need, things that are timely, things that are just need to be done very quickly, also for industrial collaboration. So discretionary allocations are only available by invitation. So if you need that, you need to submit a ticket through the tech user portal to ask for access to that, and then you'll be invited to that opportunity. When you receive that invitation, you'll be able to go in and fill in the information and request up to 15,000 SUs on Frontera. And those submissions are done on a rolling basis. So essentially, discretionary allocations are available at any time, but bear in mind that you'll want to request access to that before you actually are able to submit. And then finally, we have the startup. Startup is another form of discretionary. So in a similar fashion, if you want access, you'll need to submit a ticket in order to ask for that. Startups are really intended for you to be able to gather some benchmark data so that you can then submit for a larger allocation request. So if you've not used Frontera, or if you've not used Frontera-like hardware, you're able to get access to Frontera for to be able to gather some of that benchmark data. You also will be able to test Frontera to make sure that it's appropriate for your work. Note that startups, though, are pretty small, so 5,000 SUs on the CPU, and then there's also 3,000 SUs on Frontera GPU and 6,000 SUs on Longhorn GPU. So those are the allocation opportunities. The question is, which one? Which one should I look for? Again, considering that the LRAC has already passed, you may want to consider one of the other options right now. So if you're unsure about your code's scalability, or if you're not sure whether Frontera is going to work for you, we would suggest that you look at either a startup or pathway. If you are looking to be able to have access to Frontera for multiple years, for up to 3 years, and you've got a grant that is going to fund that process for the next 2 to 3 years, then the LSCP might be a viable option for you. And of course, education and industrial collaborators should apply for the director discretionary. So then let's kind of look behind that. Once you've applied, bear in mind that we've got a panel of reviewers who will be looking at the allocations and looking at them based on a set of criteria. So the criteria, I think it's helpful to talk about what those are, kind of give you the information that you're looking for as you're creating, because it's helpful to keep these things in mind as you're writing your documents. So we're going to look at intellectual merit. We're going to be looking for the appropriateness of the methodology. We're looking for the research plan. We're looking for an efficient use of resources. And we're also looking at a demonstrated need for a large-scale resource such as Frontera. I think key to that is, why is it that Frontera is the resource that you need and not some other resource such as Stampede? So intellectual merit, the question basically that reviewers will ask is the proposed work supported by a grant or grants that have undergone review for intellectual merit? If there's not a merit reviewed award, then reviewers will assess for intellectual merit of the work. And so then the reviewers are also going to consider whether the identified support provides necessary and sufficient human resources to complete the proposed work. So if the work seems too large for the amount of funding or the amount of people that you have working for you, with you, then the reviewers will take that into consideration. So we want to bear that in mind as you're creating your documents, that you're able to answer these questions well. Methodology, under the methodology, it's trying to assess whether the appropriate tools, methods, and approaches are in place. And again, if you can make this easier for the reviewers to determine, then the reviewers are more likely to view that favorably. If they have to figure it out or guess at it, then it's going to make it a little more difficult. So you want to make things as easy as you can for the reviewers, and try to answer these questions clearly and appropriately. The research plan, again, they're going to be looking at necessary and sufficient experience to be able to and plan in order to be able to answer the research questions that you're asking. If the reviewers have concerns about the plan, then they will document that in the review, but it may also impact the amount of allocation that's awarded. So again, to be able to answer these questions clearly and concisely for the reviewers will be in your favor. The efficient use of resources is the next criteria. Again, looking at appropriate resources and being able to use the resources appropriately with the methodology that you set forth. We're looking for efficiency. We're also looking for a demonstrated need for the size of the request that you're asking, but also your ability to run code at that scale, for example. So again, these are things that you want to try to make clear for the reviewers as they're going through the process. The panel will review and make recommendations. Generally, reviews will be done by at least 2 reviewers. There may be more reviewers per proposal. They'll make recommendations. They'll come up with a consensus recommendation, and then that will be presented to the Frontera team, which then will look at them to determine the technical feasibility, whether what's actually been proposed and what's been recommended can be done on Frontera hardware. And then once that has come through, then that information will be submitted for approval by NSF folks. So when you come to formatting your document, again, as I said, try to remember that it's going to be reviewed by human eyes. And so you want it to be clear and concise and readable. You want it to be legible. You want them to be able to read them quickly. Pay attention to page limits. So startups and the education and the discretionaries, they have a page limit of 4, not 10, 4. And then the LRAC and the pathways, those have a limit of 10 pages. So you want to pay attention to those page limits and pay attention to font size and that sort of thing. Again, you want it to be clear and legible for the reviewers so that they can read and enjoy your work and hopefully give you a favorable review. The document formatting, there's an outline here of information. It's a lot of information. And so I'm going to encourage you to check out the link at the bottom of the page. It's the Frontera website. There is information about Frontera, information about the hardware, information about all the things that we're doing there, but also about the allocation process, as well as the links to submit an allocation request. So you want to be able to go there. You will use your TAC user portal to log in when it comes time to submit the request. But before you submit that request or before you're ready, strongly encourage you to go look at the information that's given there about how to format your document and what's going to need to be in your document. So again, on this page, there's some things that highlight that there are several elements that need to be included in that document. I don't think any of these things are probably unfamiliar to you if you've submitted for other types of research proposals, but we want to make sure that these things are included. There is a separate document that you can submit for references so that your references, your works cited doesn't have to take up your page count. So you can submit that as a separate document. It is optional. You don't have to submit that separately, but you're encouraged to do so, particularly if you're trying to use all 10 of your pages or 4 of your pages, depending on what you're submitting for. When you go to the Frontera webpage and you read through that material and you begin to formulate your plan on how you're going to submit what you're going to submit, create your documents, then you can begin the submission process. So the submission process is the link here that's provided on this slide, TAC-submit. When you go there, again, you'll log in with your TAC user portal. If you don't remember your TAC user portal, you can submit a ticket or you can reset your password via the portal. And then from there, you'll receive a list. When you log into that submit page, you'll receive a list of the opportunities that are available to you. So you, for example, on the screen, you're seeing there is a Frontera startup and a director discretionaries. You won't see those unless you have submitted a ticket and asked for access to those. And once that's been granted, those will pop up in that list. I would encourage you to go in and look at these, and you can click the green button and go in and see what the next screen looks like. There's some preliminary information that you'll fill in. those would be things that are listed here on the right side of the screen. So you'll put in the title of the request, you'll put in an abstract, which will be part of the publicly accessible information for your submission. You can submit a field of science or multiple field of science with a primary and then some additional. You will also enter the PI, the co-PIs, and other collaborators on your project. You'll be able to put in supporting grant information, including starting and ending dates, which is really important. You'll be able to put in the amount that you're requesting for each resource. And then, of course, you'll be able to put in the end date for your proposal. In some cases, it won't matter, but in other cases, it will, depending upon what you're submitting for. And then finally, the documents, which, by the way, do have to be submitted in PDF form. And those documents, again, there's the main document, and then there is the reference that is an optional document. Again, there is a lot more information that's available on the Frontera website. Highly recommend that you go there, review that information, and if you have questions, you can follow up with us on that. But there's so much information there that I highly encourage you to read through that and get as much information as you can. And then when you write your proposal, you're able to write for a perspective that will allow the reviewers to get what they need in order to be able to give you a favorable review. Finally, there is the learn.tac website. I want to encourage you to go there. You can review this later, this presentation, but also you'll find that there's a lot of other information that is there for how to use TAC resources, well, Frontera included. You'll also be able to get some information as new things are coming available that will be helpful for you. If you have a question and would like to send an email, you're welcome to send an email to us@tac.utexas.edu. That comes to me, but it also comes to other people in the user services department so that you're not dependent on me to help you, but other people can be there to help you as well. And also you're welcome to submit a ticket through the TAC user portal or through the feedback form. And with that, I think I've gone through all that I have. So that's it. Thank you very much for attending today. Appreciate it.